Hey, everybody. Hello, everyone. Is everyone here? And can you see and can you hear me? Because last week was a disaster as far as technology went. So I'm going to double check right in the beginning here to make sure that I'm actually on air. Everybody, am I on air? Oh, good, great. And why do I look like I have a That's interesting. Do I look like I'm got sunburn on me or something? Because something's not right here. Maybe it's the light, or maybe it's just my monitor. Oh, it's so frustrating because I never know what you are seeing out there. I can only sort of see what I see, and then I look later and go, oh, okay, that was kind of weird looking. Okay, I'm going to try to get the elephant trunk out of my head. All right, so I'm glad you're all here. Now I'm hot. Okay, so I got to take this off. All right, this is Hangout number 6, and I did an early one again today for the UK because I know, and some people are more available during the day than they are at night, so I like to switch it up. So everybody's, oh, Carol, okay, Carol, Carolina, you told me last time which one it was. Carolina? I hate getting people's names wrong. And you told me last time because I asked you, and I'm going to ask you again so I can get it right. Lisa, hi. Annie, hi. Martin, hi. Like North Carolina. Okay, thank you. I'll ask you again next week because I'll probably forget again. But Carolina, excellent. All right, and who else is here? We've also got, who else is up here? And Claire's here. Claire is here too. So this is awesome. And I've got some interesting things to talk about today, a couple questions to answer, and also just some fun stuff. To start out with, oh, by the way, if you're not a part of Patreon, which is Friends of Profiling of Pat Brown, that's why you're not here for the live part, because you have to be part of that to come here, because I have a special small group of people, and you can go in the description below, and you can always go over to Patreon and join. And then you can be here. The Sundays, of course, are always open to the public completely as far as live goes. And, oh, by the way, this Saturday, actually, I'm not going to do Sunday at 3 o'clock this week. I'm going to do Saturday at, let me figure out what, I believe it's 7 p.m. on Saturday. And I'm doing that because I'm going to be talking about an Australian case, and I want the people in Australia to be able to get up on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, I believe it is. Yeah, 11 o'clock in the morning, and be able to come live to the show because normally they're asleep when I do the show. So since this is an Australian case, I'm going to do Saturday night. So Saturday Night Live, which is a first. So anyway, I want anybody who doesn't know my Facebook page, or if you did and you saw this picture, I made this joke about this is Jane Fonda, and that's me. And I said, who did it better, Jane Fonda in her 80s or me in my 60s? And the reason there's a reason I did that wasn't because I was fishing for compliments. My point was, people were saying, oh my God, Jane Fonda, she's so amazing. Look at her. She's in her 80s. Look how she looks. Hey, folks, do I really look like this in my 60s? I wish I did. I don't look that way. That's called face app. It's called 1 second, click, change my face from 60 to 30. And the reason I show people that is because essentially you're being gaslighted. People always talk about gaslighting. And this is gaslighting. People, both men and women, see stars. They see people in the news. They see them in shows like Jane Fonda's show. And she looks damn fine in her 80s. Now, I'm not saying she's not a good-looking 80-year-old woman. I'm not saying that. She's kept herself in good shape. She was always an exercise person. She's a good-looking person. I'm not saying she's not a good-looking 80-year-old. She may look way better than most people in their 80s. However, when you're in Hollywood, you do Botox, you do plastic surgeries, you do them sometimes on a regular basis. And then when you do a show or a photo, you get great hairstylists, you get great makeup. And then, this is what people don't get, they still use digital stuff to make you look good. And that's what I do with FaceApp. At FaceApp, anybody can just download FaceApp for free. I have all of my thumbnails on my YouTube shows They're all face apped. And people say, well, why didn't you put your real face on your thumbnails? Because I like to look at my face when it looks better. I like my cute thumbnails. It's like, oh, it looked like Hollywood. Oh, it looked this way. It's just for fun. I'm not trying to gaslight you, because as soon as you click on the show, you go, she used some kind of face app, which is good. I want people to understand nothing wrong with fixing up a photo if you want to do so and enjoying it. Nothing wrong with Hollywood people wanting to keep their careers going, because, you know, when you're in television and movies, they don't like you when you look older. And that's a fact. So even myself, I mean, I've been out of TV news for quite a while. And they allowed me in later than most people simply because there were so few profilers in the world, especially females. So they let me look slightly older instead of being 20, 25, 30. But as I get into my 60s, I'm less desirable. Not that they wouldn't have me on, still a profiler. But you look at a lot of the news anchors and you'll find lots of beautiful younger women in there, unless you're like Barbara Walters and you've been around so long, you can crawl into the studio, you know, on their casket and they'll let you in. So because you're super famous. But, you know, I'm not knocking movie stars for wanting to look great and adorning magazine covers. And what magazine covers was she on? She was on, I forgot what cover she was on. I didn't put a link in there on my own thing here, but she's on a big magazine cover and she looks fabulous and it's okay. But the thing that bugs me is that people are saying, oh my God, she looks so great for her age. She looks stunning. I'm like, you're being gaslighted. That is not the way she looks. If you saw her in person in the supermarket, she ain't going to look that way. And here's the problem that I have with gaslighting of this sort, and that people are falling for it. Instead of just saying, those are movie stars, they're making use of stuff we can't do. And now you can even do that with video, by the way. It used to be just still photos. Now you can take video and you can erase all the wrinkles all the way through an entire video. So when you see Jane Fonda doing a show now, she even looks good in the in the actual TV show because they can do the same thing. So my problem is this. People actually believe that that's the way you're supposed to look when you're 80. And this photo of me that makes me look 30 is not the way anybody should look at 60. I mean, well, I'd like to look that way, but they're not going to. And so we start comparing ourselves against the people who can do this. So women feel badly about themselves and they spend an ungodly amount of money trying to cover up wrinkles and get rid of wrinkles and do one of this and do that because they believe this stuff is that people actually look this good. And maybe once in a while it's true, but reality, not really. And then there's men out there who see women looking this beautiful at 60, 65, 80, and they look at their wife and go, what the hell happened to you? And they get disappointed that their wife doesn't look so spectacular in her 60s and 70s and 80s. And it happens less with men. I mean, I'm not saying men in Hollywood don't do the same things. They do, but not so much as females. And there's so much just pushed at women. Women are spending a fortune and being very frustrated that they can't keep up with the youthful look. So I just say, screw it, you know, you're not gonna be able to achieve that. Just relax, enjoy life, and be comfortable and put a smile on your face, you know, and give up that rest of that crap. So anyway, that was just a fun thing that I came across and I thought it was kind of amusing. So anyway, next thing I want to talk about is someone was saying that, you know, I don't like podcasts at all. And like, don't you like any podcasts? And actually there is one I like, and I want to bring it to your attention because I'm not against everything like people think I am. You're against this, you're against that. No, I'm not against everything. The podcast I recommend is called Maddie. It's about the Madeleine McCann case. I think there's maybe 10 different episodes, I think. And it is done by, let me try to get Mark's name correct, Mark Saunokonoko. Mark Saunokonoko. He's from Australia. He is a journalist in Australia. Martin says, Mark Saunokonoko thingy. Yeah, pretty much. Mark Saunokonoko. Mark Saunokonoko. Mark Saunokonoko. And great name, just can't say it. So he did this podcast, and he's a journalist. He did interview me for one of the podcasts, but that's not why I'm saying it's good. The reason I like his podcast is he truly is an investigative journalist, and he truly sticks with the evidence. And any interviews he does, he really asks for the evidence. And everything he puts in there is, as far as I've found, factual and has this evidence. So I'm very impressed by what he has done. This is a true example of a responsible journalist, an ethical journalist, who is putting together something that he is spending a great deal of time making sure that everything he puts in there is accurate, and not just going off on an agenda, not just going off on emotions and everything else that he's going to throw in there. They're really well done. So I don't have a problem with that. So my problem is with podcasts that, start getting into, let's try to solve the case, even though we're just throwing out a whole bunch of information that's not even factual. And I also want to just remind people of one more thing. I talked about sometimes I'm not too opposed to like a one-time show on something. Like I think Crime Junkies does like one show per case. And although I found the one they did on Madeline McCann completely wrong, at least it's just one show of completely wrong. They have great voices. They tell a good story. So a lot of times what you'll get with the one show people is they'll tell a good story. But here's the problem. As long as you're just sort of listening to it, just to sort of enjoy it and hear a story about something creepy that happened, and you want to, I heard about that murder. I just kind of want to know sort of some basic stuff. Fine. Do not believe that everything you hear in a show done by a non-professional, sometimes even professionals, by the way, are necessarily accurate. And this is the problem again. People believe things are accurate when they don't have the proof that they're accurate. And I have a good example here from a show, which actually I kind of like it. So I'm not even going to trash the show because I kind of like it. His name is, let me see if I can find it. I just lost it again. Something moved out of my way here. Okay. His name is, he calls himself the Casual Criminalist. Okay. And he does, hold on, let me stop this. There's noise here. It's called the Casual Criminalist. He has 219,000 subscribers. He is, let me say about him. I'm not sure. I think he's out of Czechoslovakia. I'm not sure. Speaks perfect English. So I might be an American or a Brit. I'm not sure who he is. Anyway, he has this website called the Casual Criminalist website also. And he did a thing on the Smiley face killers, which I had to listen to because I thought it was interesting. But he does a lot of great editing work. So he's talking into his microphone. I'll pull him up just so I can show you what it looks like.
And in different countries, okay. And that's how he gets up
like
to 350. Would be my speculation or something like that, like a weird mixing of things. But let's carry on.
So, and then he does really cool, fun things.
We'll start with the Smileys. First, a little experiment. If you're currently outside
in a town
or a city, do a quick
he's got a great voice. He talks, he does it, and then he puts up all these funny little pictures behind him, and just really, I don't know how much work is put into the editing, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Love it. Absolutely think it's fantastic. He tells a lot of truth about the Smiley face killer things. He's not really buying into the theory. He kind of thinks that those people that are involved saying there really are Smiley face killer gang out there. The detectives, the retired detectives from New York, and a criminologist, and he's basically saying, I don't know where they're coming up with this stuff. So he kind of doesn't really think it's true, but he kind of leaves it in a gray area because he doesn't like haters, I guess. But he does a really great job, and it's just a very fun show. And he only does one per case, and I have to just say, he's called the Casual Criminalist. You want something fun to listen to? I can't argue. It's really fun to listen to. Now, but here's the problem. Now, how many of you remember? Well, maybe you don't remember because you may not have seen the show. But the show I did was on, hold on a second. Whoops, I just hit Netflix. I hate it when you click on the wrong. icon thingy. Okay, where's my picture thingy? There it is. Not that one. Oh God, why is it doing this to me? Okay, here it is. All right, so I talked about a guy named Todd Kohlhepp. It's in the one. It's in the show that is on the Superbike murders. And so if you go to my show list, you'll see the Superbike murders. And one of the reasons I was so upset with the police and said that they were in this particular instance, the sheriff was corrupt, was that, and the prosecutor was corrupt, is that they claimed that Todd Kohlhepp confessed to these murders and he knew something only the murderer would know, that every one of the 4 victims was shot in the forehead. And that's how he knew he was the right guy, because only the killer and the police knew that everybody was shot in the forehead. Except that's a lie, because I have the autopsy report and nobody was shot in the forehead. And if you're wondering how I got the autopsy report, it's because I worked on that case with the sheriff's department. I spent a week down there. I saw the information. I saw the autopsy reports on each one of the victims. No one was shot in the forehead. So I know that's a lie. Now, here is a wonderful, very funny Casual Criminalist. Now listen to what he says.
What's up? Todd was his usual light-hearted self, discussing the massacre of 4 innocents as if he were chatting about a video game. The cops knew he was telling the truth because he had information that was never made public. Every one of the victims died from a gunshot wound to the forehead.
See what he said? If you could hear it, I'm not sure how well this came across. Because how do they know that? Because every one of the victims was shot with 1 shot to the forehead. And there you go. So now you're listening to this show. Funny as hell, really interesting, love it. But he's not giving accurate information, and neither are any of the other mass media channels who lied about this as well. Nobody is saying from the autopsy reports, which I can say because I have copies of the autopsy reports. I have copies. I didn't just see them. Okay, did that say a shot in the forehead? No, I have the autopsy reports. I can read them to you. If I were doing that, if I were trying to prove that, I can read the entire autopsy report. Matter of fact, I don't think I did that in my show. I should have. Might have to put copies up. Now I might have to add some copies. Might have to do that. But he didn't prove that all this was true. He just told the story as he's heard the story. So it's like a game of telephone. So if you're just reporting stuff the way you heard it through the telephone, which is a game, which means you're not really doing investigative journalism, you're just telling a story. And that's the problem. People can see show after show after show, and over they'll hear from people like this pretty funny guy that the victims of these Superbike murders were shot in the forehead, and they believe it. And then, somebody like me comes along, tries to say otherwise, and they're like, well, that's not true. I've heard it everywhere. Everywhere. From people who aren't telling you the truth. We're just telling a story, and the story is already messed up. And it's gossip at that point. So I just want to bring that up because I think it's really important to understand that. Because isn't that crazy? So that's why we get confused about things, because we aren't really getting the truth. So again, you see somebody who looks gorgeous at 80, who clearly looks like they're 40 instead of 80, say, bully for you, you look great. But I don't have to necessarily believe that that's natural. And when you listen to a podcast or a one show thing and you hear it and you say, well, that was fun to listen to. Okay. Just don't believe that everything you hear is the truth. And don't go off on, go crazy about, oh my God, you're denying that that's true. I know it's true. No, actually, I know it's not true because I actually investigated it. But that's the important thing about not always being manipulated into believing things. Think for yourself and ask yourself, do you have evidence, or should you just find it interesting, but stop there before you believe something that isn't true? So I thought that was really cool when I saw that in his this guy's show. I like, interesting what I'm kind of trying to say. Now I'm going to, here's something somebody asked me. It said, when was the first time you really dealt with a psychopath and got to understand psychopathy? And that's easy. I got my first cat. Yeah, that'll do it right there. Sorry, all you cat lovers. You know they're psychopaths. You do know they're psychopaths, don't you? Anyway, I never actually wanted a cat, but I was driving out to California, and as I was driving there, I stopped at this kind of crappy motel, and while I was there, this woman ran up to me just as I was leaving and said, "Oh, do you know anybody who's interested in taking a cat, because they're gonna take this cat to the pound and kill it?" And it was this really pretty Siamese cat, and I felt guilty because that's what you do. You play somebody with that. And I'm like, "Oh, poor kitty." So I was like, "I'll take the kitty." And then she put the kitty in my car, not in a container or anything. And then she came back and threw a whole bunch of cat food in with me. And I drove off and I went, "Wait a minute. How come the woman has cat food?" And then on the way to California, the cat had babies. And then I had a cat with like 5 kittens. And in my new apartment, which didn't allow animals. So that was my first experience with a cat. And then somehow I ended up having cats for like the next 40 years. So what's wrong with me? So, I have a cat now, a Ziggy, and Ziggy's totally psychopathic. I can tell you that, absolutely. Somebody showed the other day this video online, and they're like, "Oh, look how this cat is saving a baby from falling down the steps." And it really did. The baby was like crawling toward these steps, and the cat came running over and actually grabbed it and pulled it away from the steps. And I'm like, yeah, my cat would just trip me down those steps, because every time I would go down the steps of the house I used to live in, the cat would try to kill me. And luckily I moved to a one-story house, and now the cat can't do that anymore. He still tries to kill me in other ways, but there's no steps now, so I'm a little bit safer. But now what he does is, if I don't pay him the proper attention, he just shits on my floor, And so during homeschooling time with my granddaughter was here every day. So the cat would come and sit with us on the couch, and we would pet it during our reading, and then would sit on our books and, be the annoying cat that it was. And then when it was tired of us, it would try to rip our faces off and then go away. And then my granddaughter went back to school, and now the thing is really pissed because I guess I don't give it quite as much attention as it wants. And so it's been pooping on the floor again. So psychopaths, cats, never trust a cat, very manipulative creatures. They will gaslight you too. They'll make you feel like you're the one that's wrong when they're actually torturing you. So I don't know, does anybody here have a cat, or are you just all dog people or lizard people like some wonderful people? I'm just curious whether any of you. Oh, Martin says, "I love cats." Now, what does that say about a person who loves cats? Maybe you're just in an abusive relationship, Martin. Wow. Martin says, "Like cats sit for friends when they go away." Oh my God. You're like the best friend ever. Carolina has no pets at all. Lisa says, "My cat attacked me already today. It's only 9 a.m. I love him though. I'm messing with you about cats, but I've had a lot of cats. My favorite was a Bengal. I had a Bengal and I had the Bengal's mom. And so I had the two Bengals together, and they were really amazing animals, very much wilder, and could run like the wind and climb like you wouldn't believe. And really cool cats, more dog-like. They have more dog-like behaviors. They were a little bit less domestic cat-like. I think the domestic cats have really learned to be kind of, say, very psychopathic. I did have a wonderful cat named Rooksy. So when I moved to here in Maryland, to my new house, Rooksy vanished. And, I had the evil cat and the good cat, and the good cat vanished, leaving me with the evil cat. So isn't it great? But I'm glad you still love your cat. Yes, Ziggy is going to outlast me. I swear to God, the cat will never die. You know the song, "The Cat Came Back"? No, and then the cat came back. It's my cat. Ziggy will always be here with me. Annie says, "Just dogs and geckos." I'm not really a super dog person, although now I have 3 dogs that live right around me, my daughter's dogs. But the geckos, you know me, Annie. I'm a reptile person. I go for geckos. I go for lizards. I love lizards. So yay. But anyway, that was just a joke about getting to know psychopaths. But I do want to talk about, I'm going to do a little bit. I'll talk about, since we've had all these issues about relationships and people in abusive relationships with the Gabby Petito case. What was the dynamic there and all that. And I want to talk about that in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about this, which was a question about when you're outside the police case, do you have a right to talk about a police case? And I think that's a really good question, because I've often said, I know, from outside a police case, I have just public information. And I sometimes think one thing. And then when the police bring me in on the case and I'm sitting there in the room going through everything, I realize, oh my God, I didn't know a lot of things about this case. And now I have a very different opinion being on the inside. So this is why I get very concerned about the podcasters who go on and on about every detail they think is true or not true, or all the YouTubers who go on and on and on, because they are getting people involved in a case that they really do not know from the inside what is true and what isn't. They do not have access to all the material. So they're all guessing, and sometimes guessing very badly, and then causing a lot of trouble with people calling in erroneous tips and all of that. So this guy wrote this to me on it was on the Delphi case with the two girls who were murdered in the park by the guy, they call him Bridge Guy. And you can look at my video on that. I have the Delphi murders here. I got a lot of flack off of that one because it's one of those cases where people are overly involved and trying to come up with suspects who killed these two girls, and they're coming up with every suspect within 10,000 miles. It's just kind of craziness. But he wrote an interesting thing, and this is what is interesting with that question. If you're on the outside of the case, profiler, should you even comment? Because you've already said that you should be on the inside of the case to really know what's going on. So should I even do a YouTube video if I'm not working that case? Okay. Valid question. And here was this guy. Now, mind you, just keep in mind, I knew immediately this guy was coming from the particular person who puts out YouTube videos on Delphi, who already has sent people after me to basically bully me and stalk me. So he's got some people who really pissed off that I commented on his particular YouTube channel. So anyway, this guy says, your criticisms of Inspector Carter are all based on your opinion that they are dealing with a serial killer. However, Inspector Carter is the man on the case, and logic tells us he would certainly have a far better idea of what's going on in the investigation than you. Now, I agree with him, generally speaking. Of course, he's saying that as an insult to me because that's the purpose. But anyway, basically, he's half right. Many who have watched the particular conference, this was the conference where he calls him Inspector Carter. I don't know. I thought it was a sheriff, but I don't really, or police chief. I'm not sure who was actually speaking. But what happened was he was doing a conference on the Delphi murders and the two girls who've been murdered in the park, the two teenagers, and there's this bridge guy. They got a video of a guy going over the bridge, and that's the guy because one of the girls actually videoed him. So we know pretty much, unless it's some very peculiar thing happened, that this is the guy that killed the two girls. And so this, the police representative, who I thought was police chief, but anyway, he came out, and what he did was he mocked the killer, and he said, he tried to appeal to him, like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was appealing to him as if the guy was not a psychopath. So I have often said for I don't know how many years, you do not play head games with a psychopath, especially a serial killer. It's pointless. It is absolutely pointless. And it makes you look kind of weak. So don't do that. Don't sit there and go, Mr. Serial Killer, we're going to get you. Mr. Serial Killer, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is just not good. And I object to this. I believe strongly that the police should put together a statement with the facts that people then can call in tips. You don't talk to a serial killer. You simply say, on this particular, walk out and you hold this thing up or put it on a screen and you say, we're looking for help from the public. We have a great team of people working together to catch to catch the killer of these two girls. Here's what we need to know. The girls were killed on such and such a date at such and such a location. And here's the information we have about the suspect. And here's what we can tell you. The suspect is a psychopath. Here's some behaviors of a psychopath. Do you know anybody with these behaviors who would be available to kill those girls on that day? If they haven't mentioned a weapon, they should mention a weapon. He stabbed them. He had a knife that looked like this long or this short. Somebody might have given somebody a knife to hide. Somebody might have been digging a hole in the backyard and hiding a knife. They do this stuff. They might have given it to their wife and said, "Can you clean this up? Take the blood off of it. I killed a deer." But exactly at the time those two girls were murdered, he killed a deer, and he happened to kill it near the place the girls were murdered. And he's a psychopath. That's the information you want to give to the public. You don't need to be talking to the psychopath. That was my stance on that. So he goes on. Many who had watched the particular conference have said he chose his words very carefully. No, he did not. That is a typical thing I see over and over again in serial homicide cases. We're going to get you, and you must be ashamed of yourself. You should. And they try to insult him. You're a loser, blah, blah, blah. And it's just serving no purpose. And then they never catch the guy. And so they look stupid on top of it. It's like, well, you gave this great speech and you never caught him. Turn yourself in. Not going to happen. Feel badly for the families. You're a psychopath. You're not going to feel bad for anybody. I mean, these are all pointless things. Don't have conversations with psychopaths. You can have conversations with a psychopath's family. That's different. You can say the family of this person out there knows this guy's weird behaviors. Here are the weird behaviors. Here is where he would have been. Family, friends, employers, employees who work with this guy. We need your help. Don't talk to the psychopath. Talk to the people around the psychopath. And it's not very carefully based on information. It's junk. I've heard so many off the cuff press conference things where the police chief just basically is angry at the killer, so he says what he says. And sometimes they'll say the FBI told him to say that. And if the FBI told him to talk to the killer, the FBI is dead wrong. And I will say that, and I will stand by it. And I have heard the FBI sometimes say to play head games with a killer, and it is never worked. It's pointless, and it's embarrassing. Don't do it. And the FBI should not tell anybody to do it. It's ridiculous. And then he goes on, let's say, now, it may prove that new information may change this, but that is only speculation. It might be best if people who had direct information contact the police, as opposed to people stating that they know it must be a serial killer. Okay, people. No, dude, I'm not people. I'm a profiler. And I'm not saying that to be, arrogant. I'm saying that because that's my profession. I'm not just people. This is my 2 decades worth of studying and working cases that I would be very confident in saying the guy is a serial killer. Now, why am I confident of that? Well, there is one man who goes and stalks 2 teenage girls and brutally kills them in a park. This wasn't a drug deal gone bad. They didn't know who the dude was. This isn't a gang hit. What, are you going to tell me that some family member hired a dude to off the 2 girls in the park? I mean, there literally is no other good explanation except the guy liked killing girls. Who just likes killing girls? Maybe raping them too. Who could that be? Oh yeah, a serial killer. I'm sorry, but if it's not a serial killer, I'll apologize and I will be truly, truly shocked. It will be a massive anomaly, because I can't come up with who else it would be for any other good reason, especially because they weren't being followed from where they're coming from. They weren't involved in any nefarious activities. So yes, if the girls had gone to meet some people in a park to buy some weed or something or whatever else they bought, and then they walked away from that location and some guy followed them, maybe he had some other issue with them. Maybe he thought they were going to, I don't know. Maybe they said something weird like, well, we're just really ratting you out to the police. I don't know. And he killed them because they thought they were going to talk. I mean, there has to be something. But 2 girls want to go for a walk in the park. They're dropped off. No one's following them at that point in time. No one knows they were even going there. They're going out and they're having a nice time. A complete stranger comes up to them and then brutally murders both of them. It's a serial killer. It is a serial killer. So, dude, I'm sorry you don't trust my opinion because, I mean, I've heard the other channel, and the other channel is going on all kinds of weird theories about who this guy could be that killed the girls for some other reason. And that's the problem with these stupid things where, you know, people who are not profilers take information that is questionable and then develop really bizarre theories that don't have any merit in evidence or in history. And I'm not objecting to people having their own opinion. And there's been some great armchair profilers out there who aren't professional profilers. I'm not saying there aren't, but the problem is a good portion of people are just going off on the stuff they've heard on television and each other's the things that are going around, and they buy it. Another funny thing that just happened with this was that somebody had asked me to do a show on the Maura Murray case. And, you know, I did a show on the Maura Murray case. And James Renner, who wrote the book True Crime Addict about the Maura Murray case, who I basically said, you know, this dude, he says in his own book he was labeled a psychopath, and I'm not going to disagree with the psychotherapist who said that. He goes off on some wild theories about how Maura Murray, who is a woman that disappeared in New Hampshire, she left her college, she went off on this evening ride, and then she vanished. She had a car crash, and then she disappeared from the car and then never been seen again. And either she wandered off and died of exposure or suicide, or a serial killer gave her a ride, and then, or a bunch of guys who kind of like a wilding thing got a hold of her, something like that. But James Renner thinks she ran away from her sexually abusive father and her creepy boyfriend, which he labels creepy, not her. And then now she's hiding in Canada. And it's a crazy theory. I said it was a crazy theory. So what happened after I did that was the woman who asked me to do the Maura Murray case apparently was one of his followers. And so after he blocked me off of Twitter, she went on Reddit. If you're not familiar with Reddit, it's just a place where people start conversations. And she went on Reddit. And first of all, in the beginning of the thing on Reddit, she said, I've asked Pat Brown to analyze the case, thinking that I'm going to support the James Renner theory. And I didn't. And then she comes back after that going, that woman's an idiot. I can't believe it. And then they all piled on. So it's like 200 comments trashing me into the end of the world, calling me a fraud and a loser and all kinds of nonsensical stuff. And some people have even done research in the past to find people who hated me in the past, and then they're repeating what they said. It's like I'm reading this whole thing going, ooh, that really pissed her off. But see, he's got a theory that's not based on facts. And then all these people are like following, going crazy about a theory that's not based on facts. So it's just something to point out that, you know, it's fine to see a bunch of different things and to learn, but recognize that unless you actually have pretty good knowledge of what the facts really are, and you put, some people say, well, you know, Pat Brown, I put in years studying this case, and you obviously only put in 5 minutes. But their years of studying the case have come from a defense team, studying defense facts, things that aren't even true. So you can study all you want the wrong things. It's not going to be information. Oh yeah, Carolina is saying here, Maura Murray, this came out on September 14th, and I read this. Maura Murray's family is anxiously awaiting to hear back from New Hampshire State Police about human bone fragments. Yeah, they were found near an area where she has been before and might have been going to, and they found human bone fragments supposedly, and they're doing DNA. And I don't know how long that takes, Carolina. I keep looking every day to see if it turns out to be Maura Murray. Hold on, bugs. Fruit flies. I hate fruit flies. There it comes again. I don't know how long it's going to take to come back. But, you know, if it does come back, it's Maura Murray. All I can say is, gee, James Renner, I guess Maura's not living her best life in Canada, is she? So, you know, this is the problem with, say people going down these rabbit holes, one after the other. Man, there's a lot of rabbit holes. And it's nice to see things when they're more sensible. Ken Main's, his channel, Unsolved No More. I don't always agree with him, but a lot of times I'm like, okay, you're explaining things really well. I see where, he's a little more cautious than me about saying things are this or that, because, he's just being more cautious. And I respect that, because when you're not cautious, people hate you a lot more. But he's much more rational. So like Mark Saunokonoko. Mark Saunokonoko uses facts and logic and is very even keeled. Ken Main's, I'm okay with him. Trying to think of Peter Hyatt. He has he does a statement analysis channel. I'm okay with Peter Hyatt. So there are people out there who I like their work, and I want everybody who comes to my channel to go to their channels. It's good to learn from a number of people, because you get varying viewpoints, and then you can weigh them out. And sometimes it's hard, kind of like being a jury, having a prosecution and defense and the two people who are supposedly experts. So let's say Ken Main says this and I say that, and then people go, but I like both of them. Who the hell's telling the truth? Who should I go with? I don't know that you have to go with anyone. I think what you have to go with is understanding how things work and learning. And that's why I keep saying, oh my God, how many times do I say this over and over again? Profiling belongs in police investigations. Because that's what gets you to the courtroom. It's to the point, theoretically, because sometimes it's not true. Theoretically, you get enough evidence then that a 4-year-old can figure out the person is guilty. So in other words, let's say, oops, I just hit the table. I love it when I do that and the thing bounces. Let's say with the Delphi case, that I say that the dude's a serial killer and whatever. So now they do the investigations, and lo and behold, finally one day they come up with this guy. They go to his house, and they get a search warrant. They go in, and they find in his secret room in the basement, they find 4 bodies of girls, videotape of him killing 10 other girls. I think that's proof of him being a serial killer. So now when you go to court and you present this, the jury shouldn't have to go, I wonder if Pat Brown was right. Now they know he is what he is. Or let's say this guy who had to comment on me and my commentary. Let's say it turns out the dude is not a serial killer, some weird anomaly. And you're like, whoa, who knew? Dude, does anybody remember the Sandra Cantu case? Does anybody remember that? Sandra Cantu. She was a little girl that went missing. I'm not sure what state. I probably should do a show on that, because boy, was I wrong. Everybody was wrong. So Lisa once asked, is there any case you think you could have done a better job with? Well, I didn't work that case. I was just doing some television commentary, and everything about that case looked like a serial killer. And it turned out to be Sandra Cantu's friend's mother. What? Everybody was like, seriously? I think she killed her and put her in a suitcase or something. It was like really bizarre. It was like, who would have guessed that? So completely an anomaly, a very rare type of case. So now let's say I worked with and profiled that case with the police. And I said to the police, well, it's looking like a serial killer. And I give my reasons. Hopefully, if I were actually working with the police, I would have said, that doesn't look like a serial killer. She went to a friend's house and something weird happened. Maybe you should check out what's happening in the friend's house. Maybe I wouldn't have said that. But let's say I did when I worked the case, and my profile was off. Well, the point of my profile was to help them figure out which direction to go. So I could have maybe not been useful to the police investigation if I sent them in the wrong direction. But that's different than proving one way or the other whether something is true. So what happens is, let's say I sent them in a direction, and then the Delphi people, the Delphi girls, they came up and went to the guy's house, and there was all the proof he was a serial killer. I'm sending you on a direction to get the proof that anybody would understand that. And so we don't have to argue it, outside of the courtroom. We can learn outside of the courtroom. We can discuss outside of the courtroom, but we don't have to get really bent out of shape outside of the courtroom, except when you're passing along a whole bunch of facts that aren't facts, So Carolina says, it's quite a risky stance for Renner to take unless he knows what happened to Moore. Makes me wonder. No, Renner, he says, the psychotherapist says I'm a psychopath. He claims that he gets obsessed with cases. He got obsessed with Maura Murray. Maybe he wants to believe she's alive and he can hang out with her someplace. The guy has a personality disorder, apparently. That's what the psychotherapist said, and he did not deny it. And when you have that, you do not behave in a normal way or function in a normal way. You do not pursue things in a normal way. And he said in his, okay, here was the email he sent me, which rather amused me. This was when he thought I was going to be on his side. He said, "Dear Ms. Brown," this is before I did the show, "as a fan of your work," fat lie. I'm sure the guy never heard of me, or he heard of me, but could care less. Because most of the time, psychopaths, if he is one, don't care about other people's work. They only care about their own. "I'm happy you're jumping into the Maura Murray case. My book is now 5 years old, and looking back, there's much I would have done differently." You think? "But I stand by what was uncovered in the process, if not the methods, because the methods you used were creepy and maybe unethical and maybe illegal. However, I'm most proud of what I've accomplished and uncovered since." He wants to point out that he goes on to accuse the boyfriend of being basically a sex assaulter, and then he comes up with all kinds of weird crap with fakes, hoaxes involving cases. Okay, porn stings from the FBI. Oh my God! And then finally, my family was stalked on vacation this year by people who work closely with the Murrays. Really? The case is a big mess. No, the case is simple. The girl went missing in a very isolated place in New Hampshire, and they simply don't have any clue who might have grabbed her, or that if she wandered off and died. They just can't. They can't find her body. It was a dark and snowy night in the middle of almost nowhere, and they just have no suspects. End of story. So please keep in mind with this case, there is no evidence that a crime even occurred. Okay, that's the one thing I will agree with Renner. He is correct about that. There is not proof that a crime occurred. Maura Murray's crashed her vehicle. This school bus driver came up and said, "Hey, do you want me to call the police?" And no, do you want me to call? Yeah, the police. She says, "Oh, no, I'm just going to call the insurance, AAA." And then he called the police anyway. And by the time the police got there, she was gone, had left the car, and in my opinion, walked down the road and caught a ride because the dogs went a little ways down the road, and then the dog stopped. So I think she got in a car, took a ride from somebody because it's freezing cold outside, and she didn't want to get nailed for DUI, because she was probably drinking and driving and smashed her car up. And then she vanished. Yes, so he's right, though. There is no proof of a crime. She could have, there's three choices. She could have either been kidnapped and eventually abducted and killed, and that would be a crime, but we have no proof. Or she could have taken a ride with somebody, then said, "Drop me off here," and the guy dropped her off there, and then she decided, life is just not worth it, and she wanders off into the mountains, far away from where the car was, and dies. And then when the guy who gave her the lift hears that she's gone missing and they think it's somebody abducted her, like, he's going to call them and say, yeah, it was me. It was my car. She got in my car. The dude is not going to do that. I'm going to hide from this one. I'm not going to let anybody know she got in my car, because he's afraid he's going to be charged with a crime. So she might have gotten out of his car, walked off, and died someplace on her own without being assaulted in any way. So again, that might not have been a crime. Or she might have, now this is Renner's claim, that her friends were following her in another car, and after she crashed, they just pulled up, she got in their car, and off she went to Canada, just to hide and disappear for the next, how many years? It is 20 years now. That isn't a crime either. So he's right. You can't prove a crime was committed, but I'm going to guarantee you she's not living in Canada. She's dead. So either she committed suicide, it was an accident after she got out of somebody else's car and just wandered off and got hypothermia and got confused and died, or somebody killed her. We just don't know which one it is. So he's right. There is not a proof of a crime yet. But he said, but this is funny. Then he goes, all that we really know is that Maura left on her own accord and did not share where she was going with her family. It's clear there was a reason for this. Yeah, the reason was, I just smashed up my dad's car. I'm in a mood. I'm kind of depressed. I just want to get away. There was no proof she was leaving the country. There was no proof she was going to kill herself necessarily. It just looked like she was going off to hide for a few days. That's about it. But of course, he's come up with a bunch of nefarious things. The reason she had to leave town was because of all these horrible people in her lives who were doing terrible things to her. And that's all made up garbage. And then he said, good luck with the show. And then you saw the show and he blocked me on Twitter, which is what you do when... That's what you do. Let's see. So, but again, there's people go down these rabbit holes with certain people, then get very obsessed with the case, and so then they come after you. Let's see what Lisa says. Thanks for the intro to Ken Maines. He is very insistent on evidence and deduction and no rumor. Refreshing. Yeah, he is. And I say we disagree with a couple cases. He personally thinks the West Memphis Three are innocent. I do not. We disagree on a couple cases. That's okay. He gives his reasoning. I give my reasoning. I think my reasoning is better. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. But I like him. I like him a lot. I like listening to him. I'm like, okay. He just did by the way, in case you're interested, he just did one on Natalie Wood. A very interesting. He goes through some of the different aspects of the case, and he said there's a couple confusing aspects. One is that he said, because she put a coat on, that would lead him toward accident, which is what I said. Because for her to put a coat on and go upstairs leads me toward that she slipped and fell off, or she was trying to do something and fell. He leaned toward that, but he said, then there's a couple of things that make me wonder. He's kind of cagey about it, but I get it. And the only thing that really, I think, unless I didn't hear his entire statement on that, he was talking about how the ship's captain came forward and said all these things. And I don't trust the ship captain as far as I can throw him. I mean, I don't. I was employed by him before, so I lied like a dog over Robert Wagner killing his wife. But now, 20 years later, when people, the sister of Natalie Wood, and has hooked up with me, and I can write a book about it and make money. Now I'll say he killed her. So I don't trust him. I just don't find him credible. But again, Ken Maines uses logic, doesn't go out and throw out evidence that doesn't exist. I really appreciate that. And so, yes, he is refreshing, Lisa, and that's why I recommend him, because I do want people to have more inputs than one person on things, because that's how you learn, and that's how you can start then, weighing out what makes sense and what doesn't. And I want to be an educational channel, not just, out here for just total entertainment. Oh, and speaking of which, I'm getting ready for the profiling school on the channel. I have put together 5 different playlists that are going to be in the school. It's going to be criminal profiling, forensic pathology, the psychology of violent crime, serial homicides, rape and serial homicide, and what was the last one? Oh, crime scene analysis and reconstruction. There's 5 of them. I'm putting together the playlist now, and then slowly I'll be adding each one of the shows to that. And that is going to be different than live. I'm going to do shorter pieces that I can put up some information and just help people understand different parts of criminal profiling and crime scene analysis and investigation. And it can be useful to all kinds of people, regular folk who just want to learn more and get a better understanding of things. It'll be great for students who are wanting to be criminal profilers, although there's no work in it. But students who just want to understand criminal profiling or crime scene analysis. Great for detectives who are either, even if they're on the street and they're not detectives, if they're police officers on the street, that's fine too, because you're running into people you have to deal with. And then for detectives on all kinds of cases, especially homicide, can come and watch different pieces without having to go to a big conference. They can just learn different things. I'm also working on an entire police training program. That's a completely different thing, because that's truly focused on just investigations and the people involved in those investigations. And the actual investigation methodology. But this channel is going to have a school. It'll be open to everybody, just so people can start getting some real information, and I hope a palatable way, without being too snooty, too difficult to understand. So it's just we'll be very logical and rational, and have some interesting examples, so that that makes sense. Now I get it. So I'm looking forward to doing that. That's kind of exciting. So it says, let's see. And he says, awesome. That will be fabulous, Pat. Well, I just want one thing out there in the world, which I think is representative of criminal profiling, because there isn't a lot out there. There are some things, there's some books I will be having. For example, I will also be recommending books to read, books that I think are the best books in each one of these areas. So when people say, what should I read on criminal profiling? Well, those books, I'll tell you, don't read those, because they're bunk. There's other books where, this is a good book to read. Read this one. And if you want to learn more, those are the books to read. And I might be recommending, even a movie or a show that gives examples of how true criminal profiling should work, or at least the concepts of it. I mean, everything has its purpose. People want to sell books. People want to have a fun show. I have people who are already saying, people who don't like me, well, Pat Brown, she does this show, and somebody complained about, remember the butter thing? Did the butter thing with the, which one was it? In the Maura Murray case. I said, she just went off and did the silly thing. And I'm like, well, look at me in Denmark. And then I showed the butter. I said, buy this off of Amazon. It's a joke, dudes. I mean, it's a joke. Do you think I'm making a lot of money off of butter makers? I'm not. But it is an awesome butter maker, by the way. Go to the Maura Murray case. Go to down below, click on Amazon, and you get a great butter maker, 4 minutes. I do love the butter maker, and I did it because it matched the story. I thought it was funny. And I'll never represent anything on my show I actually don't believe in. But hey, I'm not making a killing off of butter makers. But somebody objected to it, and some people object to me because they find me. Well, what? There's lots of words. Irreverent, sometimes snarky, making too light of things, laughing too much. I'm not serious enough. All of that's true. And I and if people ask me, why do I do my show the way I do? It's because I want to have some fun too. I mean, I want to enjoy being here and doing live shows. I want to bring things to people in a way that's interesting, but I just want to have a little fun with a very serious subject, and so that's what I do. But some people are going to like my style and some aren't. I'm not going to change it because that's just who I am. And some people will do a much more serious show. Ken Maines, I like his demeanor. He amuses me. I like the way he does it. And I like that casual casual criminologist. Is that what I just said his name was? I mean, although some of his information isn't correct, he's funny as heck. I like him. And apparently 200,000 people like him too. So everybody's got their way. And that's fine. Mark Saunokonoko. Okay, Mark Saunokonoko. I can't do that guy's name. Mark, I got to look back on my, wait a minute. I hate to mispronounce his name. Where is it? Mark Saunokonoko. Mark Saunokonoko is much more serious on all his podcasts. Very calm voice, very serious. Love it. And I like his style too. So we can all have different styles. Martin says, what's your favorite Sunday live show you've done so far and why? Well, that's an interesting question. I'd have to, wait a minute, what have I done so far? Oh my God, now you asked me to have a memory. Hold on, wait a minute. I'm gonna have to pull up my own channel because I don't actually freaking remember. Hold on a second. Yeah, do I have a memory? Okay, my channel. Yeah, okay, I go to videos. Okay, here are my videos. I would say, I think I really enjoyed, wow, that's interesting. you know, I don't know. I can answer that. Honestly, I don't, because each show has such different issues with it. Things that I find fascinating. That I'm going to keep looking here. Yeah, they're all just really, really interesting. Because, like, for example, Son of Sam, we're dealing there with a case where I was in that area where it happened, and I got to see the creepy place that was before, I did the show. I just happened to be there. And then then I found out, see, what's happening when I'm doing these shows that people are asking me to do is shows that I didn't really, cases that I know about. Like I knew about Son of Sam and Berkowitz. I've commented on Son of Sam, hey, babe, Berkowitz, talking to the dog. Yeah, right. That was silly. He's making up stuff. And I've talked about it in different ways, but I had no idea there was some guy out there connecting into a satanic cult and going down a huge rabbit hole for years. I had no idea this was going on, and that people were still obsessed with him being part of a satanic cult. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And then Kurt Cobain wasn't, he's not my style of music, although he's a very good looking fellow. And I understand why people love his music. It wasn't my style of music. So I didn't know much about Kurt Cobain. Everybody kept, you gotta check into it. And it became a fascinating story for me to look into, and it was a really interesting case of, is this suicide or is it murder? And the reasons why things are the way they are, the way that the evidence speaks is fascinating to me. So I really haven't, I liked West Memphis 3 and Kurt Cobain, the latter, because it changed my beliefs and made me think, oh, wow, okay. Well, if nothing else, I like people to be able to think. And so when I do shows, I'm not there to necessarily convince people that I'm right and other people are wrong. But it's to say, have you looked at what the meaning of this really is? Because this is what I see people where I think things go wrong in so many cases, where something that to me is pretty darn obvious because of the evidence. Other people are saying that evidence doesn't show that. And I'm like, you didn't get that from the evidence. How is that you don't understand this from the evidence? And then I try to break it down so that the evidence, you can see how the evidence supports whatever. And I hope that helps. That's what I call education. Now, some people, if they're already obsessed with a case and have already made up their minds based on Hollywood or some defense team, they will stick by that. I got, by the way, the one I did on Jeremy Bamber, I thought that was, I guess that may be one of my favorite. Bamber and Bain. I'm going to say, I really enjoyed doing the Bamber and Bain video. Because, again, I knew nothing about either one of these cases, one being in the UK, one being in New Zealand, and both of them family annihilators, and both of them with a defense team. Defense team got Bain out. The defense team has failed to get Bamber out. But really interesting cases. And the funny thing is, the Bain case is the one with a massive amount of evidence that pretty much hands down proves Bain committed that crime. Everything points to Bain. It wasn't, that his dad could not have committed the crime, that all the blood evidence and everything is with him, with Bain, the son. And yet that defense team managed to get him an appeal, and the jury let him walk, and people are like, yay. I'm like, are you kidding me? Now, somebody told me most of the people in New Zealand still think he's guilty as hell, but he's now living free in Australia. Bamber is still in prison. There is much less evidence in the Bamber case to say he was absolutely 100% guilty. Much more circumstantial case, but enough circumstantial evidence, in my opinion, that points to Jeremy Bamber and not to his sister who killed the family. However, after I did the show, my God, here come all the people who've been listening to the defense case for the last 10 years, and they're claiming, they said, well, my God, there's 10,000 pieces of evidence nobody's even heard. The jury never got to hear. Do you know what 10,000 pieces of evidence in a homicide case are? I wrote this down. The detective wrote down on a napkin, I got to go to the bathroom, and handed it to the other detective, and that's lying around in the notes. That's what the jury didn't hear. there's not 10,000 pieces of information that any relevance to the case or have any import in the case. There's always a ton of crap. And let's say, for example, out of the 10,000 pieces of evidence, there were 2,000 tips from psychics. This is not evidence. This is psychic crap. So let's cancel those 2,000 out. Now we're not 8,000. So, but the defense team is saying things. They're making things out of things that aren't true. They're saying that, there's evidence that the father actually called the police before he called his son. No, there isn't. There is not any evidence of that. That is a created thing from the defense, who took a piece of paper that somebody had scribbled something down on and then tried to claim it was a separate phone call. And now there's a huge group of people who are all leaning on that. So during the show, I try to show what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And so, should the jury have convicted Jeremy Bamber? In my opinion, yes. Does he deserve an appeal? In my opinion, no. Was it the strongest, most evidence-driven case in the world, like the Bain case, which he got out anyway? It's not. There wasn't a ton of stuff linking to Jeremy Bamber, like DNA. Like, in other words, they didn't search his house and find blood from the family in his house. That's true. But that doesn't mean it wasn't convicted rightly. So, and in UK, I believe it was a safe conviction, and people are saying it's not. So that's what the appeal team is for. The appeal team has not thought that the defense team has come up with anything worth giving him an appeal. So, but it was fascinating to do. Lisa says, so happy you enjoyed Bamber and Bain, as that was my suggestion. Oh, was it, Lisa? Oh, great suggestion. Shows you what I know about things. I mean, there's just so many cases out there that when I started the show, my big concern was I have quite a few cases of my own. And you might notice I haven't really done those. I haven't gotten into those cases that I've done. And part of it is that I'm not sure that I want to present them on YouTube. I'm not sure I'm comfortable doing that because of the families and open investigations and certain things. I have to really examine each one of them and decide. Now, superbikes, I did do because I work superbikes, and because of the corruption in superbikes, and because I know that Todd Kolip lied in his confession and the police lied about his confession, that the wrong guy, in my opinion, and I have very strong evidence that supports that, he did not commit superbikes, and I'm willing to go public with that. So I was willing to talk about that case because it's already been, he's already been somebody convicted for it. So depending on the case and depending on whether I feel comfortable going public with what I'm going to say is questionable. However, on some of these cases that are already public and, been out there like Bamber and Bain, I'm more comfortable talking about. But I worried about this with the channel. I'm thinking, well, if I don't do, 90% of my own cases, what am I going to talk about? And then great recommendations like you, Lisa, I'll do this case. I'm like, I don't even know about it. And boom, there's another case. So now I have a very long list. So, and really great suggestions and cases I had no clue about, so it's really fun. Lisa says, it was my favorite show, but such a shame that you got spammed by that fundamentalist Bamber supporter. You got it's the way it is. I mean, it's always going to be that way, Lisa. If I get upset about those things, I'm going to be upset every day of my life. If I get upset about all the bullies and all the people who attack me and they say horrible things about me, it's going to be that way. So I just block everybody as soon as I can block them. I'll talk to them if they're polite. And as soon as I know they're going to go down the let's stab Pat Brown in the head type of thing, I'm like, okay, let's insult Pat Brown. Okay, bye-bye. But if I'm not going to be a wimpy about every case I talk about, the Bamber case was very interesting, but it's hard to know if Jeremy Bamber is really guilty. Now, let me talk about, there's some interesting information that says he could be, but then there's some that says he couldn't be. So I'm not sure where I stand. Hey, I'm a profiler. If I can't analyze evidence and come to any kind of determination, I'm kind of useless. So, I'll leave the mamby-pamby stuff to people who just want to tell a story because they're not professional profilers. They can just tell the story and say, I don't know. That's cool. But if I do that, I'm kind of wimping out. So I just know I'm going to get that level of assault, and it's okay. It's a sticks and stones type of thing. You know what I mean? I've had a lot of words thrown at me and they haven't broken me yet. So there we go. Let's see what else Lisa says. Like Martin, I also enjoy the shows where you make me rethink my assumptions. Those are the most fun. I like being proved wrong when no one else knows except me. Hey, that's a really good point. I mean, there's things that, it's happened to me too. I listen to somebody's show and I go, oh, oops. Glad they don't know about that one. I think one of the questions, when you screw up on something, I think you asked me that, you screw up on something, what do you do? It's like, oh, I didn't do that right. Well, let me hide that one in here. We're human. We're not 100% correct. And interesting, don't forget this, Lisa. I could convince you that you're wrong about something, your thinking was wrong. And then you could watch Ken Maines and say, well, now Ken Maines is making me think that I was right to begin with and Pat Brown is wrong. So that may happen. And that's okay. I don't object. Again, I don't object to people, thinking differently than me. I won't argue forever on YouTube. Some people go into the comments and they want me to re-argue the entire bloody case. And everything I said, they want to attack everything I said. I'm not playing that game. I'll comment a couple times, but I'm not playing that game because, it serves no purpose. Like West Memphis 3 especially, people want to argue every single thing. And I'm like, you got my opinion. You see what evidence I'm pointing to. You don't like it? Bully for you. You go away. Go someplace else and think what you want to think. You don't have to prove me wrong. You don't have to make me admit I'm wrong. What's the purpose? As I always point out, I would never go. So Ken Maines and I disagree on West Memphis 3. You don't think I go over to Ken Maines and start attacking Ken Maines and telling him he's a fraud and you don't know what you're talking about and you're an idiot? I wouldn't do that because there's no reason for me to do that too. He's got an opinion, but he's used a lot of logic and a lot of analytical stuff, and I just don't agree on that particular case. Other cases, I agree with him absolutely, and I think his stuff is brilliant. Now, the smiley face killers, people might say, well, you've kind of attacked the retired smiley face killer detectives. Yeah, you know why? Because they're frauds. That is truly fraudulent. They have zero evidence. They've had zero evidence in 20 years. They've put forth. They've hurt families by making these claims, and they've come up with zero in all these years. And so because they're hurting people, they're really hurting people, and they're taking advantage of people, and that is fraudulent. Somebody's not fraudulent because they disagree with me. That doesn't make them a fraud. It makes them have a different opinion. And even as experts, we sometimes disagree, but to hurt the families the way that they've hurt families and to promote the most ludicrous theory I have heard, and I don't know how long. Sam, the fact that some guy who's not a detective, is a journalist, has gone off into a rabbit hole and thinks that, Son of Sam was involved in a big satanic thing and brings up all kinds of people here and there. And, people, okay, it's silly. It's ridiculous, in my opinion. But that's completely different than somebody who starts interfering with the families. And that's why I have a problem with Renner too, because a lot of his stuff that he did hurt families and hurt people by what he was going out there and then inspiring a whole bunch of people to go out and do things that were not proper. And the same thing with the smiley face killer stuff. It's just, that's one of the worst case scenarios I've ever seen of completely unethical analysis. And yeah, they piss me off. I will speak up when I think something is like that, but I won't just, go attack people because they disagree with me, because that's kind of silly. Wow, that was an hour and a half. Anybody let me see if I have anything left here I was going to talk about today that anybody had asked me about. Let me look at my notes. Have I got any notes? I've lost my notes now. Okay, let me try this note. Oh, yeah. So let me see if anybody else has any questions. I think I've covered, lots of different things. It's been an interesting week. I've had, food poisoning for 7 days. I'm finally better, thank God. I'm actually going to do a show on Whole Foods because That's a corporate criminality right there, who doesn't seem to care about the health of their customers. So that's kind of an interesting story, but I'm not going to tell it here. But I am feeling better, so thank God. And so Saturday, I'm going to do the show in the evening because of Australia. And there's this really fascinating case out of Australia where, and I forgot her name. I have to pull it up and see if I can find it. Let me see if I find her name. Okay, where's her name? And that was a suggestion. Kathleen Folbig. She supposedly killed 4 of her children. And she's been in prison for a long time. And now there's a theory that there's a genetic mutation in the 2 of the children out of the 4 that could have caused them to just die on their own, some kind of heart arrhythmia thingy. And there's a whole bunch of scientists that have signed on to free Kathleen Folbig. Very interesting. And so I'm going to do a show on Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and I will include a couple other cases. I'll be talking about, let's see, who else? Who's this? Some really couple interesting people. So I'm going to talk about 3 Munchausen syndrome by proxy, 3 that were convicted. And what makes these cases the same and what makes them different? What causes Munchausen syndrome to begin with? How do judges view that? How do people view women killing children? What are they? Are they serial killers, or do they have some other issue? So I'll be bringing all that to the table on Saturday night at 7 p.m. I say for the people in Australia who, for the Kathleen Folbig case. Now, I don't know if anybody from Australia will actually watch the show, but I'm giving them a chance. So it's going to be different this week. And maybe I'll take Sunday and go spend the day with family doing something and not have to be back at 3:00. So that's my plan for coming up. I'm also going to do one other thing I just want to mention. I'm going to do the profiling school. I'm also going to do a whole series of safety stuff because people have asked me about, especially as I wrote this book, How to Save Your Daughter's Life. And we see the cases like the Gabby Petito case. Could something have been done to save Gabby Petito? And I'm not talking about the cops in the Gabby Petito case, because I think that's just ridiculous. They couldn't arrest anybody. It was a domestic disturbance. And that Ken Maines does a great thing on that issue. It's a domestic disturbance, but it doesn't rise to the level of domestic assault to where you can actually arrest anybody. And that neither one of them wanted the other arrested. Even if one of them had been arrested, and most people are talking about the boyfriend, not Brian. They're talking about Brian, the boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, and not Gary Petito. They're saying Brian Laundrie should have been arrested. And I'm going to tell you what would have happened. Brian Laundrie would have gone to whatever, you get arrested, then you get bailed out. And guess who's going to bail him out? Gabby Petito. She'll call his parents, get Brian out. I didn't really. And then she'll apologize to Brian for making him mad and ending up in jail. She'll apologize and they will go on together just like they did. So that wasn't going to save Gabby Petito's life. And so one of the things I guess I'll just point this out since we're here. One of the things I point out in this book is, and I'll be doing, a whole series on this, risky relationships. Risky relationships, because we choose our relationships. Don't believe that the relationships choose us. We choose our relationships. You know how when people say things like, well, my son just ended up running with the wrong people. No. He chose to run with the wrong people. I mean, the wrong people didn't make him run with them. He ran with them. He said, okay, I'm coming. We get into relationships because we want those relationships. We want that person in our life. And we may be foolish and we may be not seeing things straight. And this is what my book is about, teaching people how to avoid risky relationships, because we do know things are wrong when we get into risky relationships. Yet, many times we walk into them anyway, because we're desperate to have something in our life, which we don't necessarily. In other words, we maybe should get different things in our life instead of that person. Maybe we need more companionship with good people. Maybe we need a better job. Maybe we need a pet, but maybe we don't need that person, but that person is what we think we need. So we go with them instead of being patient and waiting for a more appropriate relationship. or we play down the things that are wrong in order to keep the person because we get enough from them to want to have them around. So their people are responsible for their choices, and I'll get into that more when I talk about when I talk about risky relationships. When I'll do a whole show on that. It's not that there isn't sometimes a sad ending, but it's very hard from the outside to know what went wrong in the Brian and Gabby relationship that ended up in the situation it did. They were together a while from high school. Up until that point, there weren't a lot of friends and family trying to separate them, it seems. It seemed like they had happy moments together. So what went wrong? Was it two personalities that clashed, or was he truly an abusive personality and she was she was trapped by that abuse? We don't know because we weren't there. We don't have the evidence, and so I won't say. But I will talk about in risky relationships. I'll talk about what happens, how people get into risky relationships, and why some relationships are more risky than other relationships. And sometimes how we ourselves, unfortunately, help make that relationship more risky. So there's a lot of things. They all come into that. And I can't do it in a very short period of time. So I will do a bunch of different shows on the different concepts in this book. And safety for our daughters, but also safety for ourselves and for our sons, because all of us, and for people don't think men have safety issues. Oh, men have safety issues. As a matter of fact, when I talk about the cases on Saturday, there's a bunch of dads whose children were murdered. People forget about that. There are 3 dads who had their children murdered by the woman they married. Think about that. I mean, that's pretty scary stuff. Did they know that their wives were going to murder their children? Probably not. But yet their children were murdered by the women they were sleeping with. So men also are, susceptible to risky relationships. They may they may just go home with a girl one night and they both drink and they both have sex, and then the next morning she accuses him of rape, and he ends up losing his college, gets thrown out of his college, he loses his career, he ends up sometimes in jail, and then later she goes, "Oh yeah, I made that up." Men get into risky relationships. Black widows. They meet a wonderful woman. She convinces them she's great. They get married. She kills him. She takes all his money. Men are also part of risky relationships. So let's not say that it's just women who suffer from this. Men do too. So I'm going to do shows on that. So those are all my plans for the future. Many, many plans. And luckily my granddaughter is in school right now and I don't have to homeschool. So some of those plans might actually come true. So anyway, that's it, unless you have any other questions for me today. If not, you can save them for next week. I'll be back doing a nighttime show, but it was fun having everybody here, and always fun to be here. I like these shows. I like seeing you guys here. Lisa says, lots of fascinating stuff coming up on your channel. Looking forward to all of it. Thank you, Lisa. I'm trying it. I mean, it takes a lot of work to eventually get all of this stuff together. So it's gonna be time consuming, but I'm hoping that I have that time now and I can put forth together over time a very useful channel. I'll keep doing the live shows because they're fun to do all these different cases, and I'll be doing those along with all the rest of it. And so even if you come and let's say you're don't come and learn about risky relationships, I might say, hey, watch the Gabby, Well, I didn't do a show on Gabby Petito, but that was just a public service announcement. But I might talk about, if I do this whole section on Munchausen syndrome, I might say, oh, and then you can go watch the show I did on, this particular, what was her name again? Kathleen Folbig and Mary Beth Tinning. And there's one more person I'm going to do. I forgot her name. She's going to be on the show too, because she's a really interesting case. And so, now you can also go to that show and watch that. So I will link these things together. Martin says, go easy on the cat. I opened the door. I threw him out because it's the only way I can stop him from doing things in my house. So he was on a 24-hour ban. And then he comes back and he's like, okay, I won't do it again. And I don't know that I believe him because he's probably lying. But anyway, the door's open. The cat food is back out. We've been together for, oh my God, when did I get that cat? I think he's been around 10 or 12 years now. So as much as I call him the demon cat, the evil cat, Ziggy and I have been together a long time, and yes, he still comes and sits in my lap, and I still pet him on the head, even though he's like the worst cat I've ever owned, but he's incredibly pretty. I mean, he's a gorgeous half Maine Coon cat. He's a very pretty cat. He's just not one of my better cats. That's all I can say. He's like, you have a family and you got one problem child. That's it. He's my problem child. So anyway, again, anyone who's watched this whole show, do remember to subscribe to the channel, like this show here, share with your friends, and hit the bell for notifications. Otherwise, you won't find out what's coming up. And if you join Patreon, you can come and join me here. And you can always ask questions, and I will try to answer them during the show. Or, I've always answered them during the show. Even if you're not here, I'll answer the question, unless I forget. Sorry about that, Lisa, one time. But I will always try to answer it during the show, so that even if you can't make the show, you get to come back and say, oh, good, she answered my question. So lots of fun being here with you again today. And I will see Saturday night at 7:00. If you don't have a dating life, I don't have a dating life, so I can be here at 7:00. So hopefully I'll see some of you here. It's going to be a really interesting show about Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And this Kathleen Folbig case is really interesting because of the request now to have her freed based on the scientists saying that the children may not have been murdered by her. Really interesting stuff. So till next time, bye everybody. See ya soon.